Ferrari will not test the new rear suspension today because it has been postponed to tomorrow. In fact, Ferrari took to the track today with the Scuderia Ferrari 23 for some promotional filming. However, the real test on the rear suspension will be tomorrow. So instead of a single day for filming day, there will be two today and tomorrow. Using the previous car test, which is the 2023 car from 2 years ago, while tomorrow in the actual filming day, they will use the 2025 car, he can use up to 200 kilometers available to test the new rear suspension. So the appointment is postponed to tomorrow. But in today's video, I want to delve into what we will see tomorrow on the rear suspension, how the behavior of the Scuderia Ferrari 25 will really change, and also the technical structure of the suspension. We must discuss wind tunnel hours and examine the Hamilton and Jock clear situation. There are many topics to cover, so let's get started. But first, please leave a supportive like, and now let's look at everything in detail. Under the cover of commercial filming, Ferrari will use the allowed 200 km to evaluate the much anticipated novelties on the track. So far, the new suspension system has passed the virtual simulator tests and the dynamic bench tests, but without the track feedback, everything remains theoretical. The goal is clear: to improve the mechanical behavior of the Scuderia Ferrari 25, making it less sensitive to various ground height actions and expanding the optimal operating window of the tires. The new suspension project required months of development. The main point is to reposition the front arm of the upper triangle, finding an anchor on the gearbox housing, capable of supporting the loads without compromising the weight or structural integrity. The transmission, made of ultralight composite materials, imposes minimal thicknesses and compact geometries. But the attachment points of the suspension arms must ensure absolute rigidity, especially with a pull rod scheme like the one chosen for the Scuderia Ferrari 25, that is, the pull rod at the rear. Simulations suggest that the combination of the new bottom and the suspension could result in a gain of about a tenth per lap, which is not enough to close the 238-point gap from McLaren. This is small, but sufficient to secure second place in the Constructors' World Championship. Is that Ferrari's real goal? Indeed, the heart of this update. In the repositioning of the rear suspension arms in particular, work is being done to advance the anchoring of the upper front arm and the rear of the lower triangle. The goal is to reduce roll and pitch and ensure a more stable platform in the curve and a stiffer car in fast corners. This means maintaining the same ground clearance and therefore a more stable and parallel underbody to the asphalt. This approach generates more load indirectly. McLaren has already benefited from it and Ferrari is following suit. But it's not just mechanics with this update. In fact, the arms have now become real aerodynamic surfaces and every movement of them impacts the overall efficiency of the car. That's why Ferrari has also worked on the covers of the arms, adapting them to the new position to ensure the maximum possible aerodynamic yield. The new bottom and the rear suspension work in synergy to work best together. And why is this? This update is so
important because
it serves to stabilize the aerodynamic platform and direct the flows towards the diffuser. And after the simulator tests in the wind tunnel and on the dynamic bench, Mugello represents the first track test, waiting for the final test bench, which will be at Spa next week. And there we will officially see if this new Ferrari will give the hoped for results that we have also seen in the simulations. Work on the power steering continues. A mechanical pump generates hydraulic pressure that acts on a cylinder connected to the steering rack. The modulation of force occurs through a rotary valve controlled by a torsion bar that deforms based on the driver's effort on the steering wheel. To this is added electronic management, an EQ unit that receives data from torque, pressure, speed, and load sensors, adjusting the system's response in real time. But at Silverstone, one of the most demanding tracks in terms of lateral loads, something went wrong. The suspicion is that there was a misalignment between the new suspension kinematics and the steering servo calibration, with load variations and structural deformations that generated inconsistent feedback to the steering wheel. If microflexions occur in the suspension arms or steering, the driver may perceive an annoying play or torque variations at the steering wheel, even if the direction of the wheels remains correct. Hey Silverson, the travel of the front suspensions, especially in the presence of rapid load variations such as on curbs or fast curves in support, could have put the untuned assistance system in crisis. To compensate for these stresses, to optimize the steering response, the technicians worked on several aspects such as variable assistance based on speed, torque curve, steering angle sensitivity to try to improve the Scuderia Ferrari 25. Be cautious of Hamilton as he discussed the development direction with Jock Clear for both this year and the next. He is looking for an internal ally in Ferrari to try to steer the team according to his needs. In the Ferrari house, the pawns are moving to build the single-seater of the future. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion in his first season at Ferrari, is working behind the scenes to bring a more Mercedes-like approach to the team, going beyond his role as a driver, and his influence could grow from the next developments. Beside him is a valuable ally, Jock Clear. Historic track engineer already alongside Hamilton during his time at Mercedes, and now a key figure of the Ferrari Driver Academy and technical development. 2025 could be seen as a transition year, but Maranello is looking beyond. Frederic Vasseur's future is not yet defined, but the prancing horse is called to a leap in quality. Hamilton has confirmed that he wants to contribute to this process, trying to imprint a change in the team's mentality and work method. While Ferrari awaits the final verdict of the Mugello filming day, Hamilton's influence on future technical choices seems destined to grow. And revealing behind the scenes is Simon Lesenby of Sky Sport, who told how Jock Clear is the first to push for Ferrari to listen to Hamilton's indications. Jock worked with Lewis at Mercedes and now at Ferrari. He is the one saying loud and clear to listen to Lewis because his feedback is unmatched. Hamilton has brought his decades of experience to Maranello and wants to contribute to building the Ferrari of the future. The real question is whether he will be listened to within Ferrari and whether he will be able to change the game. A backstory also emerged about the Brembo brakes used by Ferrari. Why do we always have to do lift and coast in Ferrari? There's no race without Charles Leclerc receiving the usual lift and coast instruction via radio. A phrase that now chills Ferrari fans and is repeated appointment after appointment. But what is this technique and why does it seem to only concern the Scuderia Ferrari? 25. Lift and coast is a driving strategy that involves releasing the accelerator before the braking point, letting the car coast to reduce stress on the braking system. It serves to contain the temperatures of carbon discs and pads and avoid the risk of vapor lock. The overheating of the brake fluid, which can extend the stroke and the pedal and compromise safety during braking. Andrea Algeri, Brembo Racing's Formula 1 customer manager, explained that failing to lift and coast risks putting the entire system in crisis. The disc and the pad overheat, the fluid can boil and the feeling is lost. It becomes a real risk for the driver. The real problem with Ferrari lies not in the braking system itself, but rather in the design of the Scuderia Ferrari. 25. Each team customizes the air intakes and internal ducts to manage the cooling flows between discs, calipers, and
tires. Ferrari
would have chosen a more extreme solution to favor aerodynamic efficiency, but paying for a greater overheating of the brakes. It's a compromise that penalizes Leclerc and also Hamilton, especially Schalke exploits the front brakes even more. So why is it only Ferrari doing it? Because it's a more extreme project than the others, as far as the cooling of the brake air intakes is concerned, which instead are a strong point of McLaren, who managed to cool the brakes better without losing aerodynamic efficiency. So it's a problem of Ferrari, and specifically of Leclerc, who tends to use the front brakes more, having a more unstable rear. And for this reason, he suffers from this problem more than Hamilton does. But let's look at the new contract for difference limitations for next year as well. From 2021, Formula 1 applies the Aerodynamic Testing Restriction System, a kind of technical handicap that regulates the number of simulation hours. Contract for difference and wind tunnel usage are based on the team's positions in the Constructors' World Championship. Ahead of the 2025 Austrian Grand Prix, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile revised the test quotas.
a change.
That could have a decisive impact not only on the second half of the season, but also on the development of the cars. For 2026, when the new technical regulations will come into effect, the new percentages of available time compared to the reference base are 320 wind tunnel runs and 2,000 ICFD simulations bi-monthly. McLaren is in the first place with 70% of available hours, Mercedes 75%, Ferrari 80%, Red Bull 85%, and so on for all the others. It's worth noting that Aston Martin is in 8th place out of 10 teams with 105% of available wind tunnel hours. Ferrari could take advantage of the new margin to push the development of the Scuderia Ferrari 25 and seek tangible results already this year. Having more hours available than McLaren and Mercedes, Red Bull seems intent on developing resources only for 2026. Mercedes is likely the most penalized among the top teams, as it is not as advanced as McLaren but has fewer development hours compared to the others. So, on the wind tunnel hours, certainly Ferrari is not in a bad position compared to the others, having more hours than McLaren and Mercedes. Surely Red Bull has more hours available, but it will struggle more for next year because it has to try to optimize the aerodynamic package, paying something in terms of power unit. Among all these teams, Aston Martin has the biggest advantage because it has many more hours, almost 20% more compared to other teams in wind tunnel hours, and the contract for difference that it can use to develop not only this year's Aston Martin but also next year's, that of Adrian Newey and Alonso, let's remember, is the only one powered by Honda. But we must finally comment on the words of Carlos Sainz, who has expressed his opinion on the situation in Ferrari and also on what he could have said last year. They asked him what it's like to live an entire season as a Formula 1 driver without a seat, and he replied, difficult and terribly complicated. Sainz drives the Williams, and in the 2024 season, he switched to driving a Ferrari, knowing he would lose his place at the end of the season. And he said, we all have a demon and an angel inside us. My demon suggested me to do or say many things to change, but my angel prevailed. It wouldn't have been right. I remained professional. Regarding Ferrari, Charles Leclerc's former teammate with the prancing horse confessed to having struggled with some negative thoughts in the 2024 season. Knowing that Lewis Hamilton would take his place at the end of the year, a driver with a big ego could have torn Ferrari apart that year. Becoming more political, I stayed professional, giving my all until the last race, he said in a podcast. I did it for the team and myself. It wouldn't have been fair to set the environment on fire for all those uninvolved in the decision made at the 2024 World Championship. Sainz had an impactful role in helping Ferrari finish second in the Constructors' Championship, behind McLaren achieving 2 victories in Australia and Mexico and also 9 podiums. How do you evaluate these statements by Carlos Sainz? How do you see Ferrari also for the filming day, which in the end has been postponed to tomorrow? The real one, where we will see the rear suspension. Are you confident or not? Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on all Formula 1 and Ferrari news. Here, among other things, see you next time.